Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Surprise! So I have been asked to become one of the design team members for Technique Junkies, and I couldn't be more excited or proud. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Today we're going to use the Boho Dots background to create a couple of different backgrounds here. And just look for lots of videos from me in the future. Just look at this pile of stuff that Pat sent me. And that's not even the stuff. This is just the April release, and I'm not going to show them all to you right now. I'll save that for a later video. I know that my friend Tracy Schultz will be doing an unboxing video today, so I'm going to let her do her unboxing live, and I'll just get on with the project here. Okay, so we've got the Boho Dots background. This is a S947 from Technique Junkies, part of the April release. And I'm also going to be using Never Stop Flying. This is SD717, also from Technique Junkies. And we're going to start out by making our background. And yeah, getting it out. I've got it in a plastic bag, it's kind of stuck. Well, we'll fight with it a little bit. I'm so excited to be on this design team. This is great. I love Technique Junkie stamps. So I'm just going to lay that flat down, and I'm going to grab a piece of my Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I'm going to grab some actual Lavinia inks. So I'm going to use my Lavinia brushes and my Lavinia inks. You can use any kind of inks you want. I do recommend a juicy ink for this method, just because you know, you're going to be tamping ink down. So I'm going to use Mulberry, I'm going to use Blue Lagoon, and I'm going to use Mermaid. If I can get her dug out here. There we go. And I'll be using these two brushes, which are also from Lavinia. I really like these for stenciling and tamping color down. And I'm zooming in here so that you can see kind of that there's a pattern to these. Sort of a swirly pattern. So I'm going to kind of follow that pattern with my inks, starting with the Mulberry ink. I'm just going to take and dab my brush into the ink and then tap it onto the stamp. And this ink stays wet long enough to be able to do this method. And I'm doing it kind of in circular motions just around the circular parts. It's a very easy method. So I'll get those covered with the Mulberry ink. And I will be sort of blending too, but the way the stamp works, you wouldn't even really have to. You wouldn't get much of a harsh line, but I do want to avoid the harsh lines. So I'm going to switch brushes, and I'm going to switch over to the Blue Lagoon, and then I'm going to go around each one of these Mulberry patterns and just tamp it out. And you can see, because the Lavinia colors are very vivid, you can definitely see the color. If you were using one of their lighter colors like the lime or something, you probably wouldn't be able to see it very well, but we're avoiding the lime for right now. It just doesn't blend well. You want to make sure that you're using colors that blend well together, so because they will be overlapping some. And then now I'm going to go in with the Mermaid, and I'm going to use the same brush, and I'm going to start tamping in the Mermaid. And it's kind of a tamping motion, just like stenciling, because these, you know, typically they're stencil brushes. I'll just go ahead and fill in the space here, all the blank space, and it's okay if they overlap. I want them to. There we go. And then I'll go back in with the Mulberry and just sort of soften out those areas where the Mulberry ink is. And it'll blend very nicely with the blue and create sort of a purple. So see how I'm just softening that out? There we go. Now I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to lay it directly onto the stamp. And I'm going to put pressure. And I'm just going to put pressure with my fingers and just rub. And I am pushing fairly hard. May not look like it, but I am. and just make sure I get all the areas covered. This is sort of a one and done deal. You could do it twice, but getting your paper back down the same, tricky. There we go. So now we've got a beautiful, colorful background going on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean off my stamp and just sort of put away my inks and stuff, get things out of the way, try and stay organized best I can. Well, y'all know how great I'm at organizing. Yeah, no, my desk is a hot mess when I'm done with a project. I don't put anything away till I'm finished. And then sometimes I walk away and put it away later or in the morning. So you can use like a scrubby tool to kind of scrub out that ink if you want to. And this little one that I got on Amazon works just fine. I also have a Rub It Scrub It from Ranger. I just don't know where I put it. And I actually cut it down into fourths because it's such a huge stamp cleaner and I just don't need it that huge. So let's get that out of the way. And then I have already stamped out this little sort of butterfly woman, and I have cut her out with one of these Sizzix dies so that she's into an oval shape. But I do want some color on here. So I'm going to go back in with those same inks, and I'm going to be painting with my water pen. And I'll start with the Mermaid Lagoon, I think. Let's see here. I don't know which one I'm starting. I'm looking here for my ink, I'm looking for my little blender pen, but I don't know where the heck I put it. There's so much stuff. It's just easy to lose things. So I decided to go ahead and use the Jane Davenport water brush here. It does put out a lot of water, so you know, if you want heavy concentrated colors, you might want to avoid that one. So I'm just going to lay a little bit of my Lavinia ink down here on my mat and add a little bit of water. And I'm going to give my brush a little squeeze to make sure there's water coming out, because I don't want the color too heavy. And I took way more than I needed. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the little wings with color. Pretty easy to do. And I had stamped this down in VersaFine Clair, so I can watercolor over it. If you wanted to do, if you wanted to do your Copic markers or something, you would want to use a Memento ink or the Catherine Puller ink, which is perfectly fine to use on red rubber stamps. Okay, so I'm finished with that color. And now I'm going to go ahead and go in with the Blue Lagoon. And I don't need nearly as much, so I'm just going to dab the very, very corner there and give it a little squirt. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in the next third of the wings. I'm not going to fill it all the way to the edge. I'll be using the mulberry and it will blend with that color. It'll look really nice. So I'm a little darker towards the bottom and lighter towards the top. And you'll see there, I forget to color that one bottom part, but that's an easy thing to remedy, and I'll show you how. Okay. Next, let's get the mulberry. I'm just kind of cleaning off my brush. I just make a little water come out and then wipe it off. Now I'll tamp down a little bit of mulberry. Give it a little squirt with water because I don't want it real dark. And I'll go ahead and just kind of blend it in here with this Blue Lagoon, and they just blend beautifully. You can see, well, you probably can't see it, but when I was getting water, I accidentally sprayed out some of that ink, and there's some ink splotches on this that, again, you can't see. So there I realized I forgot to do that blue. Easy enough to fix. I'll just grab the ink pad, and I'll just dip into the lid because there's a little excess on the lid, and then squirt out with some water because I don't want it too dark. And go ahead and fill in that spot with the Blue Lagoon. And that's all the coloring I'm going to do on this, but I've got this excess ink, And what I want to do is I want to splatter it. So I'm just going to take that same brush, run it in there, and just splatter. Just run it in the ink that's still sitting on my mat. And then I'll pick that up and move it out of the way and wipe off all of my ink so that I don't get my project dirty. And what I want to do here is I want to set that aside to dry, and I'm going to pull back this background piece, and I'm going to trim this down. And I'm going to trim it to 4 by 5 1/4. So the stamps will do a perfect 4 by 5 1/4 card if they are designated as a background scrap. Oops, there's a little rabbit butt there. Sorry about that. Oh boy. I love these kind of abstract dotted type backgrounds because you can make them fit to anything. Okay, anything. They're a perfect noise stamp. They're a perfect, colorful stamp. They're a perfect black and white stamp. You can stamp in black over a color or multiple colors. Just so many things you can do with those. So what I want to do here is I want to add some depth to the edges of this. So I'm going to take my little, I'm going to use the mulberry here, and I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper here so I can dab my brush off. I don't want to go too dark. And I'm putting everything here on my mat again. And I'm just going to tap off on the piece of paper, and then I'm just going to swipe color in. So, but I tap off each time just to make sure that I don't get a big glob of heavy color. But at the same time, I do want to kind of vignette these edges. And I, want to use the colors that are already in the pattern. Let's move this out of my way. It's kind of in the way there. Here we go. It's just pretty simple, brushing it in. You could go over the whole thing if you wanted to. Again, I just kind of want to keep a vignette type feel to it. All right, and then I'm going to do her, so that's how she's going to be sitting on there, but I'm going to do her in the mermaid color. Or maybe I'm going to do her in the Blue Lagoon. I think I want to do her in the mermaid though, since, I don't know why, since I splattered with the Blue Lagoon. Nope, going in with the blue. Okay. And same thing, I'm going to tap my brush in, and then I'm going to tap it off onto my piece of scrap paper. And you don't need a whole lot of ink. I don't even really need to dip in anymore. I'm just sort of turning the piece and going around it. See, don't even need any more ink. Just a very light vignette. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's get stuff put away here and get started on the next step. And I do want to make sure that I, again, thoroughly clean off my mat. And you want to do that whether you see ink on there or not, because I can't tell you how many times I've picked up ink that I can't see. Like it might be a red or a yellow ink and I simply can't see it. And next thing you know, it's all over my project. So I've got her. What I want to do is I want to spray her with this iridescent shimmering bliss. And yes, I do realize that I am not shaking it the right way. So let me go ahead and do it the right way, which is to roll it. And you see I've got inky fingers now. And it doesn't want to spray because I haven't used it in a long time. So I'm going to go and clean out the nozzle real quick. At first I try to clean it out, just trying to get that off of there. But I take it to the sink to get it cleaned out. Okay, I've got my nozzle cleaned out. Now I can spray. And I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but it will give an iridescent shimmer to the whole thing. Let me see if I can bring it up and see if you can see that shimmer. Well, I'm going to dry this a little bit because, I'm going to be using it again. And I'm going to wipe off any iridescent off of my mat here. And I'm going to go ahead and dry this a little bit so that it's ready to go. yeah, I get my cord tangled. My two drying, I've got my heated tool and I've got my embossing tool both plugged into the same strip, and sometimes I get them tangled up, which is a bummer. And it doesn't take long for this stuff to dry. Probably take longer for those wings to dry than anything, but we'll get it nice and dry. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same die and I'm going to take and cut a piece of foam here out of the same die. Now, ultimately, I end up trimming it because here's what happens when you're cutting a large piece like this in your cutting machine. The pressure of it stretches it out. So even though I'm using the exact same die, it will come out bigger than the paper piece that I cut because of the stretching. So just keep that in mind. Smaller stuff, not as bad, but something bigger, it does tend to stretch it. So no problem. You can see here that it's bigger, and I don't want it bigger. I don't want it showing. So I'm going to trim off about 1/4 of an inch here all the way around. Not hard to do. I mainly just wanted to pop up this little butterfly lady. And you could use foam tape. You could not pop it up. You could cut several ovals of the same out of paper. Any way you want to do it, go for it. This, I'm just trying to use this stuff up, and I need the kind that already has sticky on it. So I'm checking for fit there, and then I'm just going to go ahead and lay my glue down. And just by the way, we will be doing 2 cards with this background today. Generally, I only do 1 card, but I thought since I'm celebrating my new induction into the Technique Junkies design team world, that I would do 2 for my very first video. So I'm going to lay that down onto the foam, and I'm going to let it dry. Okay, now that that's dry, I'm ready to attach it to my card. So I'm going to grab let me see, I think I'll grab a white card base for this, since there is quite a lot of white in it, and since I'm using white, I'm going to make sure my mat's nice and clean. Someday, I mean, most of the cards that I give away have ink smudges on the back or on inside, and they're a mess. So I'm going to go ahead and just open out my card base, and this is just a standard card base. And I'm going to glue this straight down, and I think I'll go ahead and use a tape runner for this. I'm really horrible with tape runners. I don't know what I do wrong, but they tend to misbehave for me. But this one is working pretty good. It's from scrapbook.com, and I think it's a permanent one. It doesn't say on it. I think it is, though, because I do have one that has non-permanent, removable, and it's a different color, so I just don't know if it's from scrapbook.com. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this laid down even on here. And then I'm going to grab my little angel or my little butterfly lady. And I'll tell you, here's one thing that I love about a lot of the Technique Junkies stamps. I don't have to come up with a sentiment. They have one included. You don't have to use the sentiment. You can just mask that off if you want to. But because it's already got one on there, it saves me. I have a hard time thinking of what to put on there. You know, because mostly I'm not a sentiment person. I don't have, well, I do have a lot of sentiment stamps, but they're all pretty generic, and I like my stuff to stand out and be different. And that's what I've always loved about Technique Junkie stamps, is they're different. They're very different. I'm not always looking at the same doggone thing. So there we go. There's our beautiful butterfly girl and her beautiful little sentiment. Let's see. Just love it. Just love this stamp. I'm so glad I picked it. All right, so now we're going to do a second card with this one, and we're going to go a different way this time. So let me get this out of the way, and I'm going to grab my stamping platform for this because I'm going to need this. I'm going to need to stamp more than once. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a little embossing. And I see the bottom of my screen's out of the way, and I keep a little piece of acetate just right in my stamping platform, because a lot of the stamps that I use, whether it be Technique Junkies or other, are they don't have any markings on them, so I can't really see where I'm stamping. Get that little piece of paper off my mat, and I'm just going to lay this down on here, kind of centered, and I want to make sure that my card is on the 2-inch mark, so that if it comes up, or if I need to bring it up, I can easily place it back where it was, and the stamp will still be in the same place as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just get my stamp onto my stamping platform. Make sure it's nice and stuck. And then we'll be using Catherine Pooler inks for this. So let me just grab my inks here, and I'm going to be using from the Spa collection, the Paradise Found, and I want to say Urban something. Well, you'll see here in a minute. But I'm going to go in here with this purple color first. And let me turn this so you can see what I'm doing. And I don't know why I didn't think to just pull the stamp platform off. I'm silly that way. See, because my paper moved, which is no biggie, because remember I put it at the 2-inch mark, so I remember where I need to put it. Gonna again use my little tamping brushes from Lavinia, and I'm gonna go in with this purple color first. And this time I'm going random. I'm not gonna try to go into any specific patterns. I'm just gonna lay ink down. So these stay wet long enough as well. Then I'll go in with Daydream. I am, again, making sure that I'm using colors that if I mix them together, they don't make mud. I do like to make mud, everybody knows that, but I don't want mud on this particular one, because we're going for, I'm kind of going for a unicorny type card, really magical and sparkly. I'm going to go in now with the Peppermint Scrub. Just random places, sometimes going over, sometimes not. And here's me answering my phone. There's a reason I do voiceovers. And then I want to go in with, let me grab the other group. And I mostly use the minis because it's not the first ink I reach for. Catherine Pooler isn't. I do like it. I'm going to go in with, I think, the Sangria here. So it's just another shade of purple. And I'm not even going to clean off my brush at this point. It doesn't make a difference. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to just dab in and blob that ink everywhere. And then finally, I'm going to go in with the pink champagne. But before I do, I will clean off my brush because I have very dark ink on my brush. And I want the pink champagne to be pink. So I don't want any excess ink. So I'm just going to take a piece of paper, and I'm just going to take a piece of accent opaque paper and just start rubbing my brush off until basically it's, you know, it's not laying down heavy color. And then I'm comfortable going in with the pink champagne. And I'm going in just in all the rest of the open spaces. And the look I'm going for, of course, is random. So it looks like I'm going to actually go in with the rouge as well for the rest of it. So all these colors, when blended together, still look beautiful. All right, now I'm going to flip everything back around here. Again, I don't know why I didn't think to just remove the lid. I forget sometimes that you can. And then I'm going to make sure that that card is sitting in the 2-inch spot. And I'm going to go ahead and lay down my stamp. And I'm going to put pressure on it. And I will use my little fattening chunky tool here to get it spread out. It's not fattening to me because I don't like Skittles, but if it was M&Ms, it would be empty. So anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead and get this ink down onto this card. And see, it's very beautiful. So, but we're not finished here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off now and clean my stamp, because the next thing I want to do is I want to emboss. And so we're going to be embossing over the same portion, and this would be, I guess, kind of a Joseph's coat technique, but not really. I do need to kind of dry this piece right here, and in hindsight, maybe drying it wasn't the best idea, but the Catherine Puller ink isn't going to stay wet long enough for me to get the embossing powder down that I need. So let me go ahead and dry this. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and also add some colors. So this is Saltwater Taffy, and this is just Distress Spray Stain. And then I will go in with, oh, let's see here, a little bit of Salvage Patina. And it looks very orange, but don't worry, it's not going to stay orange. And then I want to go in with some Kitsch Flamingo. And it looks like I accidentally didn't hit the record button when I was doing the embossing, but what I did was I embossed over the same area with some Catherine Puller Halo embossing powder. Now see, I'm dabbing this up because I don't want it so heavy. So when I lift it up, you may be able to see that embossing powder. Sometimes I think I hit the record button and I actually hit the stop button. So I've got this laying here, and I'm going to give it a dry here, so, you know, to bring back that embossing powder. Can you see it now? It's really, really sparkly, this Halo embossing powder. And all I did was I laid it back down in the platform, and I put down some embossing ink onto the same stamp, put it in the same spot, and then embossed it with that Halo embossing powder. So I want to make sure this is pretty good and dry. And then it's still a little dark for me, so I'm going to water it down. See how there's those dark areas? I don't want that. So, and then I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm just going to lift. Just to lighten everything up and dry it off. And do want to make sure that this is, you know, perfectly dry, and it will warp the paper some. You can flatten it back out because remember I used just Bristol Smooth cardstock. But see, as it dries, the color dries back. I'm just going to dry the back a bit, just to help it along, because I sprayed quite a lot of water on there. And then I'll of course need to trim that down. And I'm just going to kind of bend it around back into shape. And you see I've got embossing powder on my mat, so that proves that I did actually emboss it. Anyway, let's get that wiped off. And this, by the way, is just a mat that I got from QVC. It is silicone. It is grippy on both sides, so I really love using it. But I'm going to go ahead and trim this down. And I'm going to trim this to 4 by 5 1/4. Nah, I think I'll go 3 3/4 by 5. Because I want to do a double matting on it. So just trimming off those edges till I have 3 3/4 by 5. There we go. Let me get that excess out of the way. And what I have here is I've got my main panel, and I want to make this unicorny, remember, so I am going to use a word die, and this is magical. I've cut it out of holographic cardstock and stacked it, and then some white sparkly cardstock. So I'm going to first glue the shadow layer down and make sure that's good and glued down. I'm just going to use regular glue. And I do like to make sure it's good and dry between each layer, and especially this layer because we are gluing onto some embossing, and it's kind of a glittery embossing. So I'm going to get plenty of glue down. I'm going to lay this down, make sure that it's even, and then I'm going to lay something heavy on it to dry. There we go. All right, that's nice and dry. Now we're going to go on to the next step, which I've got this piece of foam that I've already cut down, and I'm going to glue that onto this piece of the panel. And part of the reason that I'm using the foam is because I've got a little warping from all the heating, and if I glue it to the foam and then glue the foam down, it's going to help kind of hold everything, you know, so it's not warped up. So I'm just using my regular Reptile adhesive that I always use. And it comes in a bigger bottle, and I like to just put it in these little, these are actually bottles made for alcohol ink. You get like 50 of them for 10 or 15 bucks on Amazon. And I just like to, this glue works really well in there generally. And, you know, if the top gets cloggy, I just put a new one on there. It's pretty easy. And then I'm going to be gluing that down to this holographic piece of cardstock that's cut down to 4 1/4 or 4 by 5 1/4. So this will be a landscape card. And we'll go ahead and get this glued down. And this is coming up a little, and that's okay because it takes a little bit for the glue to dry on this foam. The holographic paper I got from Simon Says Stamps. It's Simon Says Stamps brand holographic, silver holographic paper. And even though it doesn't matter because I don't have it glued to anything, I'm still going to put that on right side up. And then I will again put something heavy on it to dry for a few minutes, walk away, eat some breakfast, whatever, and come back. All right, here we go. And then I'm going to glue this all down to a piece of pink cardstock. And I believe this pink cardstock also comes from Simon Says Stamps. I can't remember the name of it. It came in one of my monthly kits, but it's a really pretty pink. And just pop this down. So sometimes you'll look at something and you'll say, well, that can't come out to anything, right? But now look at what's happening here as we start adding layers to this card. It just starts to come to life. So now we've got that nice and dry. It's time to glue on my magical word here. Wanted to do that last because I wanted to be able to take advantage of all the flatness that I needed to get all the layers dried. And I'm just putting little dots of glue. Now I cut this out. This is a Kathy Zilski for Simon Says Stamps word die. I cut it out and then cut out 3 more pieces of regular white and glued it on so that I have some dimension here. Get that good and stuck down, and we're good to go on that. We're golden. And the only thing that's really left to do is let's get some embellishment on here. So I'm going to grab some of my confetti, and this is from Honeybee Stamps, and I've got one that's kind of just an iridescent color, so to kind of go along with the iridescent theme. And I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my little tray things. I get these at the dollar store in the wedding section. I think you get like 10 of them or 5 in a pack. I can't remember, but as much as I lose things, I don't want to buy the expensive ones. And so I'm going to put 3 little dots down here to the bottom right. Now I'm going to take my little wax pencil here and just lay down these beautiful little pieces of confetti. Now they still are cupped, so I do like to make sure that the cup side goes down so that they're not, you know, so that they actually stay down. And then I'm going to put 2 right up here. So I do have a discount code, and it will be in the description box. It is TJ10 Color. if you want to purchase any of these stamps. Now the new release is on sale for 15% off, but if you do buy any other products from Technique Junkies, make sure to use my code. And I just realized I accidentally got a gold one on there, but that's okay. I'm just going to let it be gold. So here's our magical card, and here's our little butterfly lady, both using the background boho dots from techniquejunkies.com, and also I use the Never Stop Flying, and I will link those in the description box. So here is my discount code. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm so excited to share my news with you. Have a great day.